So after spending weeks fighting with Sony to get a video unblocked on Pure, I'm making this video instead, and I'm going to try to like restructure some of the footage that I had from that original video, which was more of a reaction video, because this video is on Pure, which was the season finale of the first season of Into the Dark on Hulu. Into the Dark is a horror anthology series, and Pure was their film on Lilith. It's the most recent adaptation of the Lilith myth in American television. It came out this September, so I thought I'd cover it to add a little addendum to my original Lilith video. So Pure follows the character Shay, played by Jakara Smith, I don't know how to say her first name, but best known as Sailor J on YouTube, who did Contouring 101. Shay is a girl who just met her biological father a couple of months prior to the start of the film, and she and her half-sister agree to go to this like purity camp that her half-sister goes to every year out in the middle of nowhere. So the premise of the camp is that this pastor runs it as like a sort of father-daughter event where the girls kind of sit in, I guess, like Bible circles or something and talk about how important it is to remain pure. And then at the end of the weekend, they and their dads like sign a contract where they like pledge that they're gonna remain pure until marriage.
It's kind of funny that like this whole beautiful event just culminates in paperwork. I know that this is like meant to be artistically like a moment that's really important, like narratively speaking, but it's not like this contract is legally binding.
It includes a lot of like really strange events over the weekend, including these like faux wedding pictures where like the dads take pictures with their daughters who are dressed in like white like wedding dress style outfits. The film is entirely about female sexuality, and it makes sense to include Lilith as a figure in this plot. The girls face trials throughout, things that they don't even know are trials until the end, as they're, shamed and pushed into this idea of like virginity and sexual purity. Though one girl actually, her storyline isn't about sexuality at all, but is instead about body weight, as her dad like continuously fat shames her.
We talked about still too snug.
That little dress we talked about, God.
Throughout the film, which was, I'm thankful for like the second edition of this idea of what purity means, and I think there's like room for an entirely different video on the idea of like body purity in terms of food, and this idea of like clean eating or like juicing to purge your body of toxins, which like none of that is real or true or makes any sense or has any like genuine scientific backing, by the way. So I think like if that was what I was talking about, like that is like a whole other topic, like a video's worth of a topic. Shay, of course, feels compelled to go through with this because she really wants to get to know her biological father, who she feels is really doing his best now that he knows that she exists. Her half-sister, Jo, participates every year but has no real interest in the events, and every year conducts this like ritual to summon Lilith because she found this book in their room that talks about Lilith. And every year the ritual doesn't work, and for some bizarre reason she just continues to conduct the ritual. I don't know. It's weird. Of course, now that Shay's here, the story is a little bit different, and Shay points out that the problem in the ritual was that she had fire for like, candles for the fire element, and she had some stones for the earth element, and I don't remember what the water part was, but clearly she had some sort of water element, but she didn't have any air element. So she needed to have an air element, so Shay went out and she found a feather and like added that to the ritual, and even though nothing happens immediately, it seems that something might have happened, because though technically before and after this ritual, Shay is like seeing Lilith as a figure. So honestly, this movie has like entirely unclear world building, and that is one of my biggest complaints about it. The other side of the Lilith part of this story is that the pastor actually uses Lilith as this idea of what you should not be, which technically makes sense. He has these like stained glass windows of like the Lilith myth, and he tells it as this like cautionary tale, though his version is like also not really part of the original like tale, because he says that like she was caught fornicating with an angel and she was sent to hell, neither of which are part of the Lilith myth. Very confusing, and more so confusing that he is even talking about Lilith at all, because she's not in the Bible or the Torah. She's just folklore. So there's this like Christian pastor using Jewish folklore to convince his and everybody else's daughters to not have sex before they're married. I have so many questions for this movie and who wrote it, and I don't think they even like read the Wikipedia page for Lilith, to be honest. I think they like maybe watched Supernatural once, or like she showed up in a video game that they played or something and they were like, let's make a movie about that, and they just did zero further research. So that's the version of the tale that the pastor tells, but the book that Joe found tells a different version of the tale, where Lilith was an angel and was punished for some reason. I actually can't entirely remember, because I hated this film. Though her punishment, I think, has something to do with sexuality. When their friend Lacey comments, well, like, Lilith isn't in the Bible, so I don't want to talk about her, which, like, totally true. That's the most accurate thing anybody has said in this film. Joe responds that the Bible is just male revisionist history, which was also a really great line in the film. I'm not gonna lie, I was like, this girl is awesome. And so she like believes in, you know, Lilith, this, you know, avenging angel or something. So weird stuff happens in the film that doesn't make any real sense or have any genuine like impact on the plot. And it all culminates in the contract signing event where the girls have to sign the contracts, but then Lacey, who's feeling a ton of shame because she kissed a boy and she was gonna like not kiss until marriage, she like steals her dad, the pastor's gun, and kills herself instead of like shooting the pastor or something. I hated that scene. And then Shay, who's like so distraught about this, like prays to Lilith and like welcomes Lilith into her body.
Now I live for that. That specifically. Call upon Lilith as your deity.
And possessed by Lilith, she's able to murder all the men in the room, and then nothing, the girls just like leave together. There's like no real ending of like, what are they gonna, you know, do with the rest of their lives? How do they explain this to the police? Do they explain this to the police? Their mothers are all at home. Like, what do they tell their mothers? Do they just go on the run forever? This is the 21st century. It's really hard to just build a whole new identity.
So like, what are these girls gonna do now? Like, they literally just committed like mass murder and then burned the church down. What do they do next? How do they continue with their lives? How do they explain this to the police? So Lilith was just waiting for somebody who wasn't a virgin to call her? So what was with the birds? I still don't know.
I mean, you know, I can almost let go of that ending because, you know, film isn't meant to entirely be reality. A lot of the time it's metaphor, and art doesn't need to make sense in that way. But with the rest of the film being kind of disappointing, I'm just going to be really critical of it anyway. I would also like to point out that in both versions of the tale in this film, neither Richard the Ben-Sira version, Lilith is victimized. So she's either like sent to hell, or you know, she's written out of history in some way. It's things that are being done to her, where one of the really big things about the original Ben-Sira tale is that Lilith, a human, did not, she wasn't cast out of Eden. She wasn't dragged to hell. She willingly left Eden. Like, she made that choice, and Adam and God tried to like force her back, and she just refused to go back. So, you know, don't you just love it when like men write about women and don't understand the difference between cast out and left, one where something is done to you and one where you are the person who is making the choice and you have like autonomy, you know, whatever. I do want to state for the record that when I made that comment, I was thinking of all adaptations of Lilith in general, not just this adaptation. And there was, in fact, a woman on the writing team for this film, and she also directed it. And that just goes to show that it doesn't matter what your gender is, you're not exempt from making stupid writing decisions. My fridge is making noise now, so I'm really sorry if you can hear that. I have no control over the noises that it makes. We don't get along all the time. So my biggest issue with this film is the idea that they've made Lilith an angel instead of keeping her as a human figure. And this is because as an angel, Lilith loses that demand for equality that defines her original tale. So the idea of the original tale is that she was made from the same earth as Adam and therefore deserves to be equal to him rather than his subordinate. But this film, by making her an angel, does away with all of that. Now she has all of the theological aspects and consequences of being an angel rather than being a human, so that's gone. And she has no connection to motherhood, which is a really important part of her original tale as well, because the idea was that she was gonna, have demons and that for children, and that they were gonna die for like every day that she refused to return to Eden. And then of course also in the original tale, another consequence of this is that she will now like bring sickness to infants, which I think originally the tale was like part of it at least was to give some sort of reason and like rationality or understanding explanation for children dying unexpectedly very young. And so as an angel, she just loses all connection to her humanity. The point of the story is that Lilith is a human woman with all of the good and the bad that goes along with that. And this direct connection to the concept of humanity, the choices that humans can make, the concept of evil within that Jewish framework. And so making her an angel just sort of takes away the power of her story of this human woman who defied God himself and refused to return to paradise, who declared herself as equal and defied her husband. One thing this film does manage, that it manages to triumph over the previous Christian incarnations of the characters, so that's Sabrina and Supernatural, is that this Lilith is not a satanic figure, which is like a very small point to like be like, hey, that's, good on you, but like it is a thing that annoys me in the previous Christian versions of her, so I'm like, well, at least in this case, they didn't like try to make a connection between her and Satan, so like, good on them. Because that was like, Sabrina is kind of the closest adaptation of the myth, and the one place where it really fails is making Lilith a subordinate to Satan, which like undermines her entire characterization. The really big problem with this film is that it fails to establish any kind of concrete world building. There's this book that Shay finds that seems supposed to be really important, but aside from telling us exactly how it's going to end, which is that Lilith is going to possess Shay, there's no real point to the book. We don't know for sure who put the book in the house. I assume it was Lilith. We don't really know what the point of the book being there is. I mean, would the ending be any different if she hadn't read that? I don't know. The idea of the dad's eyes turning black, again, super confusing. The first time it happens, he seems to react, but after that it just keeps happening, and the dads seem totally oblivious to the fact that it's happening, so it's like maybe Shay's just hallucinating, who knows. The closest the film ever came to actually using its world building is that in the book there's this picture of this guy like throwing up black muck and it says lies beneath it, and I was like, oh, that's intense.
Lies? What does that mean? You just throw up whenever you lie? It's like a harsh version of Pinocchio.
Later on in the film, the pastor starts coughing up black muck, and I'm like, whoa, like there's some like real world building going on here.
Is he gonna cough up leeches? Oh, he's lying! He's a liar, like the book says. Finally, some sort of like piece of mythology and world building in this movie that's panning out.
Get out of here. Go!
This is so exciting.
Like, it means he's a liar, he's lying, so he's coughing up black muck. This is so exciting. I'm like genuinely interested to see where this goes. And then it just doesn't go anywhere. He like coughs up black muck again later, but he isn't actually coughing, and he doesn't seem to notice it. It's just like pouring out of his mouth, and there's just, it just has no place in the film, and no like reason behind it, no consistency. So I'd say like the things that are consistent but aren't really and totally developed beyond that. You have the idea that the film is entirely about female sexuality and like teenage girl sexual awakening. They actually are really consistent about those things, mostly. As the film progresses, Shay finds 3 different bird feathers. Now, the way these are inconsistent is that they are all totally different feathers from totally different birds, and there's no real like meaning to them. It culminates in Shay seeing all these like white feathers as a contract signing, which I realized was actually supposed to symbolize Lilith's angel wings. I guess that meant that she was like arriving. But there's no like serious connection between that and the previous feathers, but there is this idea of like a bird motif or this feather motif that's also just it's underdeveloped. Like, what can I say? But the thing that gets me, so you have this female sexuality, this bird motif, and this concept of like male dominance and women having to like overcome that male dominance, especially in like a sexual arena. These motifs have all been done before in stories in the past, particularly in The Earl King by Angela Carter, which is a short story that's far more effective than this film. So I highly recommend you check that out, because like it's weird and the prose is like very odd and unusual, but it's beautiful and like just way more effective and consistent. So it's not that like Pure couldn't be equally as effective as The Earl King. Like, no, Angela Carter doesn't have like a copyright over these ideas. The problem with Pure is that it remains largely undeveloped at the writing stage, which I've noticed seems to be just a problem with Into the Dark installments. I haven't seen many, but of those that I have seen, there's just always these concepts in them that just aren't fleshed out, that aren't explained or totally understood, and so ultimately they all kind of just fall a little bit short. But in this case, where I would rank this Lilith in all the televised Liliths that we've done, I'd rank her above Supernatural for sure, because that one's garbage Lilith. Terrifying season 3 Lilith, totally love that, but backstory wise and like fear of female sexuality wise, garbage, total garbage. I hate her. Top, is obviously Sabrina's Lilith. I kind of hate putting her second to Sabrina's Lilith because, like, there's just so like, I just disagree with like everything that they did with this adaptation in terms of like Lilith's characterization. But I guess it's kind of like Lilith is an outlier and should not be counted. And if I were just to look at the other 3 televised Liliths, so we've got like Pure, Supernatural, and Darklight. No, I can't. They're just all bad. I mean, I love Darklight. I have like a lot of affection for Darklight as this like terrible early 2000s action film that was defining for my personality, but it's not good. Like, it's not a good film. It's not a good adaptation of Lilith. And yeah, the other 2 are just not good adaptations of Lilith. So anyway, read The Earl King and watch Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I guess. You do you. If you love this, that's fine. That's okay.
Wow, Lilith's a redhead? They're really gonna like demonize redheads already?
Then, our father set out to create another woman for Adam, but this time,
he created a blonde.
he did so